Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our speakers for today. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. And at any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page. Throughout today's event, you also have the opportunity to win one of several prizes, so please be sure to check out the prizes and rules raffle rules tab on the interface to see how you can earn points. To ask questions throughout this session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. We are very fortunate to have two wonderful speakers with us for this session. One of our speakers, Vatsala Sarathi, Managing Director of Operations at Stanford University Graduate School of Business. You do not see her on your screen yet. She's having some technical difficulties with our platform. So we hope that she will be joining us very, very soon. And also joining us today is Kate Hurley, Chief Information Officer at Madison International Realty. We are excited to have both Vatsala and Kate with us for a fireside chat titled At the Helm, Aligning People, Technology, and Business. Welcome, Kate, and soon happy to welcome Vatsala. This is going to be an excellent discussion. I'm going to start out with a couple of questions while we're waiting for her to join. Kate, first of all, did you want to kind of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work?
Absolutely. Thank you. Kate Hurley, I work at Madison International Realty, which is a really interesting business, a direct secondaries investment advisory firm based in New York. We have offices in Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Luxembourg, LA, and we've just opened our office in Singapore. So extremely global. And our investor base is also very global. So a lot of what I do is cybersecurity, data privacy, compliance. And there's my co-person. Hello. She's on her way. So yeah, a lot of what I do is cybersecurity, risk, and compliance, and it applies to the globalization that Madison takes care of on a daily basis, and making sure our investors and our investments are safe.
Welcome, Vatsala. We're glad you're here.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, we're having a little bit of audio. Vatsala, are you able to hear us?
Just a little bit on and off. I apologize, but by and large, I'm able to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are
I
you
had
able
started out
to-
by asking Kate to introduce herself. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role? Unfortunately,
I think
we're still having the same issues with sound.
is unfortunate. She's so amazing.
I know. Wonderful, wonderful. Vatsala, are you able to hear me now? I think I'm going to continue, Kate, and see if we can work that out for her. That's a shame. So the first topic of this session is business and technology alignment. What do you think is the number one way that you've seen leaders, or that you think leaders can ensure that technology drives business results? You know, there's so many ways that this can be done. What do
Right.
you think?
So we're in this odd pocket of time. I think that I'm old. Let me preface everything I'm saying by saying I'm old. So I've seen something similar happen in the late 90s when email and business communications through technology were first really coming on the stage. And some people were rapid adopters. And then some people thought this was all just a fad and would boil over, or and go away. Um, and we all see how that worked out. Right now, there's a giant amount of potentially business impacting technology that's either being grasped really quickly by business leaders, or you hear people talking about, oh, it's a hype cycle. It's all going to burn off. And so I've seen this happen before. What's different now is that the speed of adoption of technology and generation of technology is so much faster. So it's not going to be a 10-year implementation cycle like communications technology was. I think it's going to be a much quicker adoption cycle. And so as technologists, and now I'm finally answering your question. So as technologists, I think our most meaningful contribution can be to help, no matter where our executives come down on this, whether they think it's hype cycle or they want it right now, or they're somewhere in between, which is probably where most of us should be. We need to help them understand the practical realities of what technology can do for their business, which means if they think it's all magical and we can just, poof, put an AI up that's going to replace half their salary staffing budgets, we need to help them understand what an LLM can do and how we can get there securely and do that without boring them to death. And then if they are on the side where they think it's all a hype cycle and has no meaning for their business, we need to help them understand the same things, but also how it can make them more efficient and bring ROI. And if they're in the middle, we need to guide them towards budgeting and implementation and compliance and security. So it's the same thing we've done for every other technology that's come into the stack. We just need to be very aware that they're being guided by news media that's not us. And we need to sort of help shape the conversation. Does that make sense?
Makes great sense. I'm going to turn the floor over to Vatsala. I think that we may be able to have her on just on audio.
Everyone, and welcome to the session. I'm so excited to be here with Kathleen Hurley and Vicky Lynn. My name is Vatsala Sarathi. I manage technology, finance, and operations at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. I'm also an alum of the University from the School of Engineering and a credentialed coach. And a fun fact about myself before we go into more details about the topic at hand. I'm also trying my hands on an Indian instrument, a drum instrument called the tabla, which is so fun to play. So now, getting back to the session on business and technology alignment, it's lovely to have you, Kate, and thoughts. Companies and businesses have always known they have to match technology and the business goals. So what is it making us talk about it today? Why is it either harder to implement today, or is it more important to think about in this day and age? If you can just highlight a couple of things that you think are different today than they were before, and especially in the post-pandemic world, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think you put your hand right on it. I think there are exogenic factors that are forcing business to feel as though they need to make decisions that in the past maybe they wouldn't have felt so pressed to make. So you have a pandemic that forced businesses to take decisions they didn't want to make. You have to harness technology to allow people to work from home, not something businesses were prone to wanting to do, but had to. And now they have that technology embedded. And for some businesses, that's okay. And they've turned it to a win. But for some businesses, that's not preferable. And now the tech's there, it's culturally there, and they're kind of stuck with it. It's not great. There's other technology that's coming into the workplace that's operating the same way. ChatGPT, not preferable for some businesses, but it's coming in whether they want it or not. And so there are all of these things that are happening that maybe business isn't quite ready to ingest. So that's one factor. The other factor is there are technologies that business is bringing on board from the other side that tech support, the IT that you and I deal with, we're not quite ready to ingest. How many people do you know in our position who are super happy about all the surveillance technology that we've had to deal with? It just doesn't feel, So I think there are tensions now that were not there before. And I think that you see this in some of the recruiting and retention numbers. And it's just an interesting time to be leading in IT.
Yeah. And so true about what you said about tensions. I think change is happening from all sides. And one of the things you also mentioned, which I thought was very relevant, and which I think even, within established organizations like my university we are facing, is communication challenges. With remote workers, hybrid work situations, it becomes really hard to align what our goals are and what our policies are with what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. And we have to all, as leaders, think about changing even how we communicate these things, maybe even more communication, but also with clarity, I think is very important. And if you're communicating mostly using Slack or using email, it sounds very different when people are actually reading that communication versus when you're sitting together in a room and talking about it, seeing body language and hearing from each other. So there's so much happening today that makes this such an important topic. Um, so I'm wondering, with everything around us in a constant state of flux, what are some fears that you're seeing people having? And is it only coming from the IT staff, or is it coming from all functions of the organizations? What pressures, what fears do people have?
So I gave a sort of casual presentation not that long ago about this fear that people have that the robot overlords are coming for their jobs. It's AI is not intelligent enough to do 90% of our jobs. I think most people sense that after spending a very short amount of time playing with ChatGPT. And they've still managed to work themselves up, and there's no basis for their fear. But because there are so many other existential threats in the world, because there's so much else to be stressed out about, I think people internalize this as one more thing. So that is one element of fear. How can I be prepared against this thing I don't really understand? So one way that we can help people is by helping them understand it a little bit better. It's not a magic black box. This thing can be broken down and comprehended. It's not that hard. So that is one big fear I see. Am I going to lose my job to a robot? Another fear is from the business side. How do I'm going to use the word control, but really I think it's how do I understand what it is that my staff is doing on a ongoing regular basis. And that traces back to the pandemic and the remote work function. It's not hard to see in the larger companies that are using surveillance technology. It's very awkward to watch. And even in smaller organizations, it's culturally impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one other thing that I have noticed in my own work is, in addition to fear that AI is taking over, um, I also see people worried that skills will not match the requirements of the job anymore. And so I think it's up to us as leaders to think about reskilling and upskilling, and how can we do that in a way that is not overwhelming to people, because people are at different stages of their careers and their lives, and it may be harder for some and easier for others. How do we think about reskilling and upskilling? Because I think what we all do on a day-to-day basis is going to change whether we like it or not. How do you think about overcoming these challenges and helping the staff?
That is such a cogent point. I had a survey from my professional organization, ISACA, the other day, and they were asking me about what do we see in recent graduates when we're interviewing new kids coming out of school? What do we see that they are maybe not as educated about as they should be? And
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. And do you know, when I get a networking student, they don't know anything about physical hardware anymore. Right? They've never had to take apart a server, for example, or really run cable because it's all cloud based. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking about even if you're not reskilling for a particular gig and you don't have something in mind that you're focused on, okay, maybe I need to reskill away from a particular job and I'm going to look towards UI design or something like that. Always be looking for a gap in your educational basis that you could fill very easily. It would be my suggestion. Take something apart, break something, see if you can figure out how to
Yeah.
fix it. This is how most of us old people learned how to do things anyway. We didn't have
Yeah.
classes to go to. So I think that particularly for the younger generation where you've had the unbelievable luxury of going through formal education programs to bring you to the point where you are, and you guys are so smart, you blow me away with what you come to the table knowing. I think some practical basics that
Mhm.
that you can carry with you just by getting your hands a little dirty in your off time, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, what a lovely analogy you gave with the younger new entrants to the marketplace, to the job market, I should say. So for me, I think that also similarly, I think for the younger folks, there is a separate set of skills that they probably need help gaining. For example, the soft skills, like they can do things on their computer, but ask them to write a very clear email, or to prioritize things, what is important, how to think about the big picture. These are skills that will come with time, but also how can we help them gain those? How do you negotiate? How do you talk to somebody who's senior? How do you know get what you want without being a jerk, for example? And then for some of the senior folks who have been in the job market for a while, it's more of allowing them time to learn these new technologies and tools, and also just continually being curious. And as an organization, I think having that culture where we encourage curiosity and experimentation, I think is important, because sometimes when people think that we're not allowed to make mistakes, they don't experiment. They stop being curious. They take the safe route. And so creating that culture where people can actually make mistakes, fail fast, and I think is important. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And it's not easy. I think it's easier to do in a smaller group. So if you do it
Yeah.
on a departmental or team basis, I think it feels safer to people. I think it's hard to do authentically across an organization.
Yeah.
If the big boss tells you to do it, it doesn't feel safe. But if your supervisor tells you to do it, it feels okay. Um, but it's it's exactly as you said. If you feel that you can go back, break something, and
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to put it back together, and it's okay, then you're going to learn something every single day. You still may have your lazy day, and that's okay. That's all right. But your
Yeah.
brain won't stop finding better ways to do things, and that's the key, I think, to staying a growing professional, no matter what stage you're at. You have to, and it's the key to being a professional I'd want to hire, right? You need to be
Right.
constantly finding better ways to do things. Otherwise, why are you
Yeah.
here? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even as management, I think creating that culture is key, and also being able to hire those kinds of people, like you mentioned, who is a more curious person, rather than, can they do these tasks? It's no more about, it's not about tasks anymore. It's about, thinking big picture, connecting the dots, and contributing to the overall goal of the organization. Another thing I also noticed in some organizations is that people are afraid to come up with ideas or share their ideas, because they think that that is not their job, or they're not in that department. So, I'm not product, so I cannot come up with something, even though I'm seeing this across the board with my clients, right? So a finance person can give marketing ideas and vice versa. So I think having that open culture where everybody's encouraged to think and talk and share is really important. Um, I know we have about 10 minutes, and I'd love to hear from the audience and take some of the questions. But in the meantime, can you talk a little bit about how do you think about management challenges? So, say as an IT department, we are able to um, come up with some technology changes. How do you get buy-in from the top leadership?
It depends, right? Sometimes what we come up with is naturally and organically a solution to the problem they've been looking for their whole lives, and buy-in is a given. And those are
Mhm.
joyful days. But sometimes, let's say there's a conflict and you've got a board member who's going to buy it and a board member who's not. And
Yeah,
that's when you have to create consensus, and that's not easy. You have to,
yeah,
that's when you get to work. And I think that in situations where you've got a conflict or you're looking for funding that isn't there or you're trying to create consensus around a massive cultural change, any of those situations that require invested and sustained levels of management competence, that
Mhm.
you've got to get to work. And sometimes in technology, um, sometimes our best technologists are not our best managers, and so you have to ask yourself which side of the fence you
Yeah,
want to come down on, right? Is that the gig you want, or would you rather be fixing the machines?
yeah,
Yeah, I know I'd rather be fixing the machines, but also I know that getting the funding and working with the executives is very, very important, and something I'm able to do. So you just have to decide where your time is best spent, and and put your focus on it.
yeah. Uh, Very, very well said. There are a couple questions, and I'm going to read out the first one. How can we prioritize aligning people, processes, and technology in our organizations amidst constant technological advancement? So I think the key word is prioritizing, and I think it's a very, very important question because there's so many things we can do. So how would you think about prioritizing this alignment?
That is such a good question. And if you draw a matrix, I am a big believer still in putting things on paper. If you have a prioritization meeting every Monday and you have a paper matrix, people, process, technology, you should be able to Kanban out your top 5 goals for the week for your team. And you should be able to show yourself where each of them falls on that metric. I don't think it's actually hard to see that you're balancing these things. It's not about prioritizing people over process, over technology. It's about making sure those three are balanced, in my view, that you're not
Yeah.
ignoring the humans and prioritizing the computers or vice versa.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that as you're prioritizing, it's very important to communicate. And I think a lot of times people, if they don't have the full information of why some decision was made, then they start not believing in that decision. So I think constantly looking at what is the high level vision, and is everything that we're doing on a day to day basis aligning towards that? So, does it advance that business goal that we have? If so, then that gets prioritized. And also just understanding that you can only do so many things. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority actually. So explaining that to the staff and thinking about what is the most important thing for us to work on, and it may not always be a short term thing. It has to be a mix of the short term and long term, and so that's kind of how I think. But I also love the idea that you mentioned, Kate, about having that matrix. I think putting those down on paper and actually objectively looking at thinking about things is really key when we are aligning and prioritizing. Um, what role do you see emerging technology playing in shaping the future of business processes? Any tips to help us prepare?
I think this is already happening, but if by emerging tech we are thinking about ML and AI, I think there are a couple of other emerging technological advancements like quantum processing and a couple of other things that may also play into this. But business process technology is actually going to change a great deal, I believe, over the next 3 to 5
Yeah.
years. This is a space to watch because a lot of automation technology is already advancing. And I don't think this is one where it's far future. I think this is happening now.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a great question about pushback, and that was one of my questions too. So I'm going to ask you this question, Kate. Can you share insights on how you can handle potential resistance or pushback from stakeholders when implementing new technology-driven processes?
So this is a process in itself. One, during your initial planning, anticipate. If you know you're going to get pushback, anticipate and build it into your plan. If you can't tell, that's one
Mhm.
thing, but if you can, do it. Two, when you get to the point of pushback, note it. Make sure it is now baked into your plan. I'm a big Kanban person, so make sure it's baked in now as a blocker. And then three, when you get to the end, circle back. And this
Ah,
right, this is a loop now. So you're stuck in the loop until you very slowly either overcome or decide to discard the pushback. You are stuck in this loop. In other words, what you're doing is absorbing this pushback as a problem into your incident problem resolution cycle, and you have to resolve it. You can't just ignore it, which is what a lot of people try to do, and you can't fight it. You can't engage in a battle about it. That's not going to get you anywhere ever. And the only other way I've ever seen successfully address it is through political machination, where you have someone from above come down on it.
mm.
Yeah, if you want to handle this yourself, I think you have to do it through your process cycle and deal with it.
I love the idea of anticipating pushback because that is a given. There is going to be, a segment of your staff who may not like it. That's one thing. But then I love even more the circling back. Bake it into your plan and keep looking at it as a blocker and see, what we can do. The other thing that has worked for me in the past is co-creating
Mm,
processes. So a lot of times I think pushback comes when people are told to do certain things, but if you ask them, how can we co-create something together, get their input, and then it becomes their idea and they are more enthusiastic about it. So I think sometimes that works as well. And the last thing I would say is when you're creating a tech strategy or roadmap, share it often with people and ask for feedback, so that way you're hearing about it as you go along rather than you build everything and then nobody wants to touch it, so that becomes pretty expensive, I think, for all of us. There is another great question. As you mentioned, AI can't do 90% of our work. Many people still are very concerned about it, that AI will take over their job. So how do we deal with that? What are your thoughts?
As I mentioned, I think this is an education issue. AI is very good at a couple of small things right now. Um, if you're asking in the next 3 to 5 years, will it be better at a lot of things? The answer is probably yes. Right now, I'm. If you're concerned about the robot overlords coming tomorrow, I'm not. If you're concerned about what will happen in 3 to 5 years, that's probably reasonable. Um, if you are in a fairly repetitive, programmable
Mhm.
job that does not
Mhm.
require lateral thinking, creative thought. So, what can you do to get into a job that requires creative lateral thinking? I think it's
Mhm.
exactly as Vatsala said, it's about reskilling, upskilling, making sure that your brain is being fully utilized. Because who wants to be in a routine, repetitive job where you don't need to use your brain anyway?
Yeah. Um, Absolutely. I think getting creative and trying to do different things, I think, is one way to make sure that you can do something that's better than a machine, for example. So lateral thinking is awesome, connecting the dots, learning new things, and trying your hand at different things. And like you said, Kate, I think it is something that we have to think about in the 3 to 5 year range. And so we do have that time. So we can start today. AI is probably making a big leap, but we can take baby steps today and start, getting our hands a little dirty, trying experimenting and seeing where our interests lie. And we might surprise ourselves. So I think it's a scary time, but it's also a fun time, I think. Um, One other question that came up is common pitfalls that CIOs encounter, and how can we mitigate them?
That's a great question. That's a very big question. Um,
It's a big question. Yes.
I think the thing I hear the most from peers is, well, budget. I think people struggle with budget no matter what size organization they're at.
Yeah.
Things change so quickly in our industry that when you make your say you're on a calendar year budget, when you make your budget in November for the following year, something new has been released by the
Yeah.
following summer, and you don't have a budget for it, and now you've got to scrap something in order to pay for this new thing. So that's a challenge no matter where you are.
Mm.
Human resourcing is a
Yeah.
challenge no matter where you are. And and then if I take the word pitfalls a little differently and think of it as how do we get ourselves into trouble, right? What was
Mm.
things issues do we create for ourselves? One of the things that I hear peers talk about consistently is communication, that we should do more of it more consistently with the board.
Yeah. Um, for me, I think some of the things that I have learned over the course of so many years is to start small and build upon small successes. So I'm a big fan of prototyping and having minimum viable products, because that is one way to, like you talked about the budget, right? I mean, nobody has unlimited budget. And so it's probably a good idea for us to think about where can we start in a small way and see how things go, what can we learn from there, and then can we build on it. So building modularly, but also starting small so that you can throw away those tools or whatever it is that you're building if they don't meet your purpose. If things change, the marketplace changes, the business environment changes, you can still try something, experiment with it, and then either decide to you know expand it to the entire organization, or discard it. So we have this framework that we call crawl, walk, run, which many people use. Is start with the MVP and then see what happens, and then take it from there. That's one thing that I have learned. The other thing is also, yeah. Sorry, Kate.
No, I said that's very smart.
The other thing is thinking about processes. I think when I think about processes and bringing in new processes, I always ask my team, if you're starting this new thing, what is it that we are stopping to do? Always thinking about, because sometimes these things just carry on forever because somebody has been doing it forever. And so thinking about how to give ourselves a little break by stopping to do some things like this report that nobody's ever reading, or isn't even that accurate anymore, or has we have this new other report that covers this. Don't let's spend time doing it. So thinking about it from a perspective of efficiency is also really key. And then there is one other question that's also very interesting. How can companies get the AI providers to help their employees get up to speed quickly and efficiently?
I'm not sure.
Any thoughts, Kate?
No, I'm not sure I can read into that question enough of what they mean. Um, I think that the major players, I'll just focus on Microsoft right now. The AI providers are offering a lot of free training,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of onboarding. So I think that's there, um, if that's what we mean by AI providers. If we're looking at some of the freeware stuff, I don't think there's anything to be done about that. So I'm not sure where else to go with that one.
Yeah, we have done exactly that. So we have gone to some of these providers, Microsoft being one of them. And of course, we are a bigger university and we are probably one of their larger clients. But, it's easy to build relationships with even smaller companies that are providing tools, like wrappers around ChatGPT and things like that, or LLMs. Bring them over, have them give a presentation, and they will be happy to talk about what they're doing in the hopes that they can sign a contract at some point. But bringing them over and opening those sessions not only just to a few directors of IT, but to the entire staff, or even sharing some their PowerPoint slides, for example, I think is one way to help our employees getting adapted to some terminology, just basic terminology. What is an LLM? What is hallucination, for example? Things like that. Just talking about these things and then bringing experts in might be a good way. But I think it's a great idea to leverage your partners in helping your own company succeed. I think that's really great. In the last few minutes, Kate, I wanted to just ask you, what innovations and opportunities are you thinking of that will shape the next 6 months to a year for CIOs and other IT leaders?
I think it's really critical for most IT leaders to take a hard look at their data stack. I think most people are realizing that at this point. If you haven't looked at your security, internal security and external securities, let's just take that as a given, and your data stack for logical and physical consistency, I think that's the most critical thing you can do in the next 3 to 6 months. Outside of that, I think you're going to see a lot of innovation in energy storage, batteries, and speed of processing. And that's going to make portable computing a little bit different for us. Maybe that's not a year out, maybe that's a little more, but I think there are some really cool advancements coming in that. And that opens up a lot of possibilities. So I think I think there are still some great adventures ahead, and I am excited to see what comes in terms of innovation. But remember, it's all built on the same foundation. So if we don't mind the fundamentals, we are not doing our job as the IT caretakers.
Well said, Kate. I think security is a very, very important thing and will get more important as machines start, producing some results for us. I would also think about data in a bigger picture. How can we democratize data so that we can have everybody have access to the data while having a single source of truth? So that goes to data hygiene, communicating a common data language while we're democratizing data. So I think, and the last thing I would say before we close is biases. With data, there's always the question of, how can we avoid biases? And so, something for all of us to think about. I think we had fantastic questions from our audience and fantastic insights from Kate. So thank you so much to everyone. It was a great discussion on a very, very topical subject, crucial to every business, more so today than ever. So I'm so grateful to you, Kate, to Vicky Lynn, and to our audience for great questions and insights. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you both for a wonderful fireside chat. Insightful, practical. I really do appreciate it. And I know our audience does as well. And I want to thank everyone in our audience for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prize and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points to win a prize. Our next session will begin at 12:25 p.m. will be a thought leadership session titled AI and Automation Transformation Accelerators. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to that session, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Kate and Vatsala.